Hi, let's see how this works today. Oh my goodness, I've been trying to do this for a while. Saturday to you, it's Deborah, and I want to really talk about what story we're serving because I think it's really important for business owners, also for people who are not business owners who want to be of value in this world. So, first of all, I'm going to start off by saying I am not suggesting that we dismantle our entire system or break everything down and abandon everything all at once. I genuinely think that that would be problematic for a lot of reasons. I think it would be unsafe and unsustainable, and I think there would be pure chaos. So that's not what I'm suggesting. But what I am suggesting is that each of us, as individuals, as organizations, we look at what we're actually doing. What story are we serving? So if you've been followed any of my content, you know I'm a huge fan of Charles Eisenstein, and I like the way he frames our current situation. He frames it as the story of separation, which was a human experiment, learning, developing, maturing. The story of interbeing, which A has always been here, has always been how life actually works, but has been hidden and covered over by the story of separation, the way that humans have been telling it and seeing it for many, many years, right? Um, and then in between those two stories, in terms of when I say in between those two stories, I mean our conscious awareness, like our awareness of what story we're telling ourselves, whether we're telling ourselves the story of separation, I'll get into it in a minute, or we're telling ourselves the story of interbeing, there is a space where we need to transition between that old story of separation and the emerging story, the story that's always been there, but is now making a reappearance in global consciousness, which is the story of interbeing. In between those two stories is is what he says we're in right now, depending on our level of, you know, awareness of our situation, that we call the space, well, he calls the space between stories. So you got three eras here. We've got the story of separation, we've got the story of interbeing, and we've got the space between stories. The day that I read that, and by the way, I'm getting this from his book. So if you want to check it out, it's The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible. The day that I read that phrase, the space between stories, the breath went out of my lungs and I just started to cry profusely because it was the first time that I finally felt like I knew where the heck I was. Because up until now, I had been, or up until that point, that was about 3.5 years ago or so when I read the book. Up until that point, I had been floating, unanchored, not knowing where I belonged, what was going on. I felt like I knew who I was to myself, but I didn't know who I was to everyone around me. If you've ever felt that way, or if you feel that way right now, raise your hands in the comments. And because this is so important, because it's not just individuals that feel like this, it's the entire fabric of society. There are reasons for that. I'm not going to go into all those reasons today, but if you're interested in hearing more, just type reasons in the chat and I will, or the comments, and I will come back and do another live on that. But the entire fabric of society, not just in one country, by the way, around the world. By the way, I want to say one thing. I don't think in terms of countries. I think in terms of proximity to the capitalist ideal. And frankly, the further away I get from the capitalist ideal, including physically, like physically, the further away I get, the better I feel. Just an FYI. Anyway, so coming back to this concept of the space between stories, when I read that, I had a full body visceral response because I was like, I can't tell you how long in my life I have been like, where am I? And when I read that phrase, I finally knew where I was. I was like, that's where I am. I'm in the space between stories. I am not of the old story. I'm still learning the way things actually work, like we all are, right? Um, because it was hidden from me. I was, you know, punished and barred from accessing much of that wisdom when I was younger, but still enough of it came through. One day I'll tell you about my childhood and how it relates to this topic, but not today. So, what story are we serving? The story of separation, the story of interbeing, or the space between stories? Um, my goal, my work is to support. I don't necessarily, I mean, guide may be a little bit strong, but that's probably like the very edge of how I would describe my work. Much of it is just really support, but it's customized support for individual leaders and organizations who are purpose driven as opposed to profit driven. We all need profit, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's our highest priority for everybody, right? Um, so when we are purpose driven, whether you're an individual leader or you're an organization, you're part of a large organization that wants to move in a particular direction. You want to go from operating in the story of separation and all those practices and beliefs to operating more in the story of interbeing, or at least recognizing that you're in the space between stories and operating accordingly, then I can help. Okay, so think about it like right now I'm relearning. It's most of it is remembering because it's information I had before, but I'm remembering how to work with my body in a way in terms of my choice of food that feels better aligned with my health. Now, it's not new information, but it was so hard for me for a while to maintain this mindset on my own that eventually, when things got too stressful, I slipped into, I won't even say slip back, I kind of went worse into eating in a way that wasn't really aligned with my body for health because of just the level of stress that I was under and just the sheer effort that I had to put, I felt I needed to put into eating in a healthy way. And so I struggled with that for many years. And now that I'm remembering what I knew about food, I realized one of my biggest challenges was just that the systems don't work that way, right? The systems work in a different paradigm than I'm trying to operate in. So it's important to have community and support with like valued. I say like valued and like not like minded. If you want to hear more about that, type like valued in the chat and I'm happy to share more about that. Um, but I need to share more space and time with like valued people to be able to reinforce that different, you could say, identity from what's around me. After a while, I stop even seeing the older paradigm and I start seeing the paradigm of the space between stories and moving into a new paradigm. But in the process of making that shift, when I tried to do it by myself, it just didn't work. It didn't work because the systems were not set up to support me. So I had to work 10 times harder by myself. But once I learned, oh my goodness, I really need community. I really need other people around me who are speaking the same language, then we can do it together. And then it's not as hard. So coming back to that's just food. That's one example, okay? But anything that you want to reclaim your humanity in, your sovereignty in, you're going to need to go against the current status quo grain. because the status quo grain is to make us really sick, really unhealthy, really sad, depressed, really messed up, so that they can pump a whole bunch of pharmaceuticals into us to keep us that way and keep making money off of us, okay? And keep draining power from us to keep a world view or world paradigm is the word I use, or a world story, even though that story has long outlived its usefulness. So I say this with zero judgment. I'm part of that story still, in the sense that I still live in a world that operates by the story of separation. I still have to buy gas. I still need to sometimes go to the grocery store. I still need to do a lot of things inside of this world. But I, Deborah, don't identify with this story. I hope that that's clear. It's not a judgment of the world. It's not a judgment even of the story. It's just an awareness that I don't identify with it. Identify as being in the space between stories, learning about how life actually works, and then moving in that direction. Okay. And so, is it easy? No, it's not easy. And I don't recommend trying to do it on your own. You burn out because there just isn't enough energy and time in the day. Speaking of time, one of the greatest um, symptoms of the story of separation is time poverty in the Western world, let's say, in the places where you're more in closer proximity to capitalism in its idealized form. In other countries, it's other things, but in other parts of the world that are further away, it's other things. But the story of separation shows up, one of the biggest ways is time poverty. So if you're like, I don't have time, that is a symptom that you're still operating in that story, which is to be expected. You were born in that story. The whole world is operating in that story. However, not everyone is. And I want to really make that clear, because we need community. We need other humans to share our experiences with. Otherwise, it gets almost impossible to keep it up unless we just really love being the Lone Ranger who looks nuts to everyone around us. We need community. So I just want to let you know that there is a community of individual leaders and organizations who are not, how do I say this? Who are not completely bought into the story of separation. There may be varying levels, but when you work with someone like me, I'm a holistic practitioner. We always go at the pace of the system. This is a if you remember nothing from this live, remember this. We always go at the pace of the system. Meaning we're going to make shifts out of that story of separation mindset or paradigm and into at least the space between stories, but we're going to do it at a pace that is doable for you. We're not going to try to go too fast, and we're not going to go too slow. We're going to go at the pace that your system allows. And so that's really what I come to life doing. There's so many different iterations of my work that I have done, and they're all actually the same work. But this, where I've been for the past 2 years, this is so resonant. It is so deeply resonant on a cellular level in my body that I know that even though I will continue to grow and move and shift and expand, who I am and how I am here to serve is in helping leaders and organizations who are purpose driven move from that old story of separation into the space between stories with a perspective or with a view to learning more and becoming more integrated with the story of interbeing. Okay, I promised I would give you some definitions. Sorry, I forgot. Story of separation is the idea, the belief that we are each discrete individuals. We are not connected. It's us versus the world. We've got to make it for ourselves. It's a very individualistic and independent way of thinking, which is a necessary stage in our development, in our maturing from as a species. Okay? It's when you're a baby, you're very dependent. When you're a teenager, you want to be very independent. But ultimately, that's not the final stage. I shouldn't say the final stage, but the stage of true maturity is when you get to interdependence. And as far back as was it late 80s, early 90s, Dr. Stephen Covey talked about this in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is not new information. This has been around for a while, right? Interdependence is understanding how interrelated you are with everyone and everything else. So the story of interbeing is understanding we are not just individual discrete pieces that are like meat pieces that go around having our own thoughts and fighting the world on our own. We're energetic beings. We have all of these connections with all of life. We even have connections with what we might consider inanimate life. For example, a computer or a box or a table or a shoe. Even more so, we have connections to plants, animals, bodies of water, mountains, bodies of air. I mean, all of it. We have so much wisdom that we're immersed in 24/7. And because we're immersed in it, we're like the fish in the water. We don't know we're in water. But now the consciousness has been ready for many years now. We've been waking up to that. And so it's easy, up until recently, it's been very separated. It's been, oh, there's some people who do some meditation on the side and it helps them to stay calm at work and it helps them with their work. So they do it, but they weren't telling anyone that they did it. Only past 10 years or so have people started to come out of the closet and say, yeah, I meditate, or even go as far as to have meditation circles at work or at schools. I mean, this is new. This is considered cutting edge. What what I am suggesting is way beyond meditation. It is literally undoing gently, not radically, but gently unlearning the programming that you received to be a good slave. I'm just going to call it what it is. I'll go into that if you want. I can share with you some older posts I made about slavery and why I say that everything in this system is designed to keep us being good slaves. Um, and move, you were this great slave, this great little, worker in this system. Stepping out of that, I mean, even the phrases that we use in business, they're all mechanistic, right? Like being a cog in a wheel or a cog in the machine. It's all, if you really think about it, it's really very dehumanizing. It's stripping us of our uniqueness, our individuality, our humanity, and putting us into very mechanistic roles. So moving from that to being a fully embodied and activated and self-actualizing individual being who still understands how their connectedness, how they relate, who has given intentional attention to how they relate with time, with other beings, with themselves, with their food, with water, with the land, all of these things. Okay. So, this is a work that is very fun for me to do. I really enjoy doing it. It doesn't even feel like work because it's just like, for me, it feels like relaxing into a warm, cozy blanket, like just like a baby gets snuggled up in a blanket. That feeling of being swaddled. It's like it's remembering what it is to be in the womb, but this is the womb of universal style, of being able to come back to yourself, come back to your innocence, come back to all the childlike parts of you, and truly, truly harness the beauty that is you, and then create from that place. instead of the place that most of us learned to create from, which was fear and scarcity and tightness and restriction. So I'm really interested. Let me see if I actually answered the question. What story are we serving? Yes. So from let me come back to that before I go, because I was getting ready to get off, but I realized I didn't. I know I want to really wrap this in properly. So the story of separation is our current is the is the way that systems have been set up until this moment in time. I really wish to say that they had already started like dying at a noticeable level, and I know that they are dying, but it's still the way people think. It's still the dominant paradigm. And when I say dominant, that's exactly what I mean. Okay. But the emerging story of interbeing, which has always been there, but we're now just starting to see it come through, um, that story is very different. It operates differently. And pretty much almost all businesses are still operating within the story of separation. And I am not the only person, I'm one of many who is here to help bridge our species from the old story to the new story, because otherwise, it's really not going to be fun. It hasn't been fun, but it's really about to, it's going to continue to degenerate because it just doesn't work, right? And we've seen proof of that. We're destroying our home and ourselves at an incredibly alarming rate, and we just still keep doing it, because it's easier to do that than to actually make shifts. But I'm not here to preach at people, and I'm not here to like shame or judge. That's not what this is about, because that still kind of is part of that old story, and that's what holds it in place. Instead, what we're really trying to do is lovingly hospice what doesn't work, and take with us all the wisdom of the things that did work from the previous story. Okay. So yeah, let me know. I may have been super vague. I might have been too high level today. I'm not sure. So if you let me know in the comments if you have any questions about anything I shared, I can go into more detail into every sentence I said, but I just I don't want to overload with detail. I want to see if people are getting the big picture of what I'm trying to say. So please let me know in the comments, and much love. Have a wonderful Saturday. Mwah.